Okay, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Roland Kappa. I'm the instructor for this section of the ESPS core course, the political economy section that comes last in this sequence. Now, obviously, these are very strange and very unusual circumstances. I hope all of you are safe and are in a place where you want to be at the moment. I have tried to make this as simple as possible by posting things to YouTube, so you don't need special apps or software or things like this, and it should be accessible to everyone. Make sure you stay safe, and we'll try to work through this together. Now, I'm still trying to do the teaching here, so basically what I've done is I've recorded about an hour's worth of lecture material. Now, it's really sad because usually this class is, as you will see in a couple of slides, is super interactive. So I usually have a big game in the beginning. That's obviously not going to happen since I'm talking to you via YouTube. But I hope I'll break it up a few times in between where I want you to sort of think about things, and I want you to sort of follow along. You can obviously watch this all in one go, or you can sort of break it up in pieces. So let's get started. Let me tell you a couple words about myself. So for those of you who after these 2 weeks will still kind of like the stuff I'm doing, I teach a module within ESPS that's called political economy, and that sort of expands on some of these concepts and sort of where you write your own research paper. And I think it's quite a nice module for all years, including first years. And then I teach a class in political science that is sort of politics on the welfare state. So it's more about social policy, healthcare, things like this. In general, I'm interested in sort of models of political decision making, economic voting, public opinion elections, and these kinds of topics. So if you're thinking about your dissertations eventually, I think feel free to get in touch. Usually this is a logistics slide of where I tell you sort of what where things are and how things work. I don't know about the seminar yet. I will be in touch. The slides are online, and this lecture is online, obviously. You should already have done the readings. I think in general the readings provide additional detail, but I try to capture the important things in the lecture, obviously. The TA for this section, as for some of the other ones, is Kid, who you've met already, who's a super nice guy, obviously, and he'll be in touch with the mechanism for the Friday seminar. But again, please bear with us at the moment, because we're just making this up as we go along at the moment. So we'll try to do it this week, but I don't know the exact mechanism yet. Okay, so what is political economy? You will be shocked to hear that I'm not so sure either. I think there are two sort of, it can be lots of things to lots of people. There are sort of two traditional definitions. One is more in terms of methods, and that's because economists started using sort of models, theoretical models, before political scientists did. And this is, so, definition in terms of methods, you can think about sort of thinking with models. What is a model? So a model is basically a simplified version of reality. Political reality, economic reality is very, very complicated. So in order to make sense of it, we have to find a more abstract understanding of interactions. And that's what we do with models. And you can think of models the same way you think of models of an airplane, for example, in a wind tunnel. If you want to design an aircraft and you're wondering about aerodynamic properties of different shapes, wing shapes or something like this, what you build is a carved wooden or plastic kind of model of the aircraft. that is nothing like a real aircraft. There are no people, there are no trolleys, there are no flight attendants, there's no pilot, there's no engine, there's nothing. So it's nothing like an aircraft. But still, for the purpose of aerodynamics, it's good enough to understand how the aerodynamics of the airplane work. So we use simplified versions of reality. Some will say absurdly simplified versions in some cases of reality to make sense of the complexity. So what is a model? Models in social science usually contain a few things. So they are usually actors. These are humans. These are people. Sometimes we can model organizations, but it's often better to break down organizations as specific actors. So there's actors, individual actors usually. They have preferences. They want certain things. What are the things that they want in life? They are able to make choices. So what kind of options do they have in terms of behavior? And they interact with each other. So it's less interesting if you're just by yourself making choices, but it is more interesting when there's an interaction between people. And that's what we sometimes call games. But these are not games in a fun and games kind of sense. These are deadly serious games, of course. But it is like a game in the sense that there's a sort of clearly defined way in which people interact. The way we have modeled it, obviously. And together, the actors' preferences, choices, and the interaction let us then derive predictions for what is going to happen. And that is what we then can transfer to reality. And you'll see two examples of this in the next 2 weeks. One example is the problem of cooperation, the prisoner's dilemma. This is one of the most important and sort of workhorse models for many fields, and you'll probably understand why by the end of today. The other example we'll see is the spatial model of politics, which is also something that many of you will be familiar with. You think of things in left and right kind of terms, and so you're implicitly already using the spatial models. But we'll clarify the mechanisms there a little bit. So political economy is sometimes defined in terms of methods, in terms of thinking with models or testing theories empirically. Again, something that just sort of I'm not sure, by virtue of sort of scientific change, economists did before political scientists, but which is now universally accepted in political science, of course, as well, is sort of, the empirical testing of theoretical ideas. So I can tell you about the prisoner's dilemma, about the spatial model, or whatever it is, but the first question you should have is, okay, so is it true? Does it work empirically? It's like, you tell me a nice story about how people interact and what should be the outcome, but then you have to go to the data, you have to go to the real world and see whether people really behave this way. And we can use experiments, or we can use observational data where we observe how politicians interact, for example, or we can use survey data, or we can do case studies. We can use lots of empirical tools for this. So sometimes political economy is defined in these ways, but it's not really that distinct from political science as a discipline in that way. The other definition is more in terms of substantive focus, and I don't force this upon anyone, but I do see some value in this, of saying like, well, it's basically the interaction between the political sphere and the economic sphere, sort of both broadly defined. So how do political decisions affect economic outcomes? Or thinking about sort of what is the impact of electoral institutions or the types of parties that you get in certain countries on economic policy? Why are Sweden and Denmark and Norway different from the US and Britain and Australia, apart from sort of things like language? So there's political factors that drive these big economic differences. On the other hand, we can look the other way around. So how do economic facts or the economic system affect politics? And a classic example of this is economic voting. That's something that I'm interested in. Is sort of when the economy tanks, when the recession comes, the government and the incumbent government has hell to pay. So people want to throw the rascals out. So economic conditions affect political choices, of course. And those are the two sort of methodological definition and sort of the overlapping sphere generously defined between politics and economics. I think give us a good start to think about what I think about political economy. So for these 2 weeks, I've basically had to pick and choose. So I chose a few things that I think are really, really important models and really important ideas and concepts that you should encounter as a budding social scientist. So basically, today we'll talk about markets and market failures to sort of give you a tiny glimpse into sort of economics. And then we'll talk a little bit about the prisoner's dilemma, which, like I said, is one of the really big and important sort of models in political economy. And next week, we'll be talking about, like I said, the spatial model of politics, which is sort of like capturing this idea of left-right politics, or more complicated versions of it. And for the seminar, you have some readings on why do people vote? So what explains why people vote more in some elections than in others, and more in some countries than in others. We should get started. So the way this is going to work, this is the first video of a whole playlist. And basically, if you clicked on the playlist, they will all play one after each other. So you can obviously pause at any time you want, but I'd just let it go. And so the next video starts now, where we start talking a little bit about markets.